Me again, another video. This log's after the completion of our flute. I knew I said I would put together another log for when I'd actually managed to, before I put it together, just to show you what it'd be like. But it's not actually too different from the final product. Oh, okay, yeah, it is. But just take away all the red paint and remove the bindings, and that's pretty much exactly what you've got. But yeah, here's the flute. Here's the end of it, and as you can see, there's light pouring into it. It's a really long tube. It's about 42 centimeters long or something like that. Each of the holes is painted. I got the way that we painted it forced me to be a little bit clumsy with that one. I'm not sure, like that one I couldn't really do much about, unfortunately. But the rest of the holes turned out great in terms of how they were painted and such. And there's the mouth hole, complete with a bunch of rough crap around the edges around there, just because of fraying and stuff. And here's the end of it. I decided to carve it different because we practiced carving on the end of this, the extra end that I had. And I decided, I'm going to make this look like a snake or something. I don't know. I decided to make it a little bit more unique. So the last couple of days of construction, after we managed to polish out the holes and sand the whole thing down, which was, by the way, the sawdust, like the powder that comes off of these things when you sand them, bamboo leaves a really, really fine dust. So make sure that you do it in a well-ventilated area, otherwise you're breathing all kinds of wood you don't want to breathe. In any case, once we had sanded them down, the next thing was to try to get these things painted and lacquered and then bound. First off with the binding, because, you want to have everything settled before you actually finish the product. The lacquering is the finishing part, the finishing touch. So for the bindings, what we did was we took nylon cord because we didn't have the proper papery kind of material that they would have normally used for a Shinobi flute. But it worked out just fine. The purpose of the binding is to help restrict the reverberations of the flute in certain areas. I'm not a flute making master, so as a result, I don't know how that works. But the main purpose is to help the bamboo from splitting as much. To tie these things, which we did a loop knot. I wouldn't know exactly how to explain it. We made a loop, wrapped it around, and then we took the end of it, pulled it through the loop, pulled the two ends. The loop managed to pull on the end that we just tied through it, and you could pull it under the binding, the rest of the binding, which explains why it's a little bit harder to see where the ropes are. See, there's this little rope hiding there. Yeah, it's trying to hide under it, and that was the purpose. We were trying to hide the extremities of the string. Here's a really good example of it. It's easy to see where it was, but it's better hidden than most of the other stuff on this flute. The binding wasn't actually too difficult. It took like maybe 10 minutes once you got the hang of the knot. Once you got the hang of the knot, it went a lot quicker, exponentially quicker. So once we got the bindings down, we took some really liquidy super glue and then just lathered it all over the knot so that we'd get inside of the cord and then on top of the flute as well. So it would actually glue the binding to the flute at the same time as keeping the knot together. So, that was important. And I would expect that they would have had some sort of horse glue or whatever back in, ancient Japan or something. So using glue was probably not actually as against the rules as it probably, could have been. Once we got the bindings down, we let the super glue dry. The next day we went ahead and actually lacquered the things. And to lacquer these things was an interesting experience. We took some stuff called frog tape. It's supposed to stop paint like right there. It does not go past the tape. And we taped over each and every one of the holes and tried to create a best seal as possible. Now, I didn't create as good a seal as possible on this one, obviously. But that's what we did. And so the frog tape surrounded all of this. And what we did was we just took the red lacquer that we had. It was, I think it was oil-based. I know that you needed paint thinner for it, but it was a red lacquer, semi-translucent. We thinned it down a bit, and we dropped it down the end of the flute, spun it around, took a large polishing cloth sort of deal, and stuffed it down the flute. Made sure to get all the paint everywhere it needed to be as best as possible, and then let it dry, and then put it on a second coat. I only did 2 coats on each, and it's turned out wonderfully as far as I can tell. what ended up happening was the paint would actually go into the holes, which would be covered, and it would just create a little red well. So after it dried the second time, we had to clear out a bunch of the gunk that was inside of the flute, just hanging around inside of the holes. After that, it was really easy just to take a bunch of clear lacquer and like slather it all over this thing. I mean, not gloppy or whatever, but you know, just make sure it was everywhere. And it didn't really matter if it covered the red stuff because it was clear lacquer, like completely see-through. This is the natural wood color of this thing. And it also helps keep down the bindings. It helps to prevent more splits, of which I have one that happened. It's right there. It's really hard to see. It's kind of hard to see. But that happened after I brought it outside. So bamboo flutes, bamboo anything in North America, probably not a good idea. Unless if you take really, really good care of it. And unfortunately, I didn't. But yeah, so out of all that, the hardest construction stuff was still the time when all the stuff broke off inside of my flute and the carving. The rest of it was easy, fun, not very difficult, just maybe a little time consuming. And yeah, this thing does make a sound. It's not a very good sound, mind you, because it's there's a couple of other construction problems. I'll go into that later. But yeah. It does make a sound, so I'll just go over how it makes a sound. It's unbelievably loud, unbelievably high pitched, and it plays like about another 4 pitches before it starts just making tones, like it can make notes. It's just really airy and stuff. It doesn't reverberate at all. So I'm thinking the bamboo might have been too thick. But yeah, I'll get to explaining, you know, all that stuff in the next log.